of time to put this together, but the idea of collecting women who are engaged in the mitzvah of Chevra Kadisha seemed to be a no-brainer, right? I'm so fascinated with who you are and what we do and why we do what we do and how we do what we do, and that we're all doing it all over the world. We have women here. There's a woman hopefully here from Johannesburg. We have Israel, we have England, we have all over the United States, all over Canada, Los Angeles, we have down to Florida and Minneapolis and Scranton, Pennsylvania, and you name it, East Coast, West Coast, all around. So we're collecting women, and the idea is to create a community of women involved with Chevra Kadisha who are passionate about what we do and why we do what we do and how to grow in that and how to learn and how to enhance what we do by interacting with each other. So this event comes to you from CORE. CORE is a relatively new organization that was started, I guess, a year or so ago, an international organization supporting women who are strengthening Klal Yisrael. And we do it by training and providing mentors, by networking, and we're trying to reweave the social fabric of the Jewish people by facilitating CORE circles. So I don't want to go into all of that right now, but this is a part of CORE. And we're creating a community of women who are passionate about Chevra Kadisha and want to learn from each other, grow with each other, share with each other, process with each other, and continue the conversation. So this is the kickoff event with our esteemed teacher, Yehudis Golshevsky in Jerusalem, who's going to talk to us about the Kavana we could be having as we do our Taharas, as we do our work. But before I introduce Rebbetzin Golshevsky, I just want to mention a couple of things. We do have another event planned on April the 18th, so I'll send out an email, and I'm going to ask a little bit of a survey about what kinds of things you might be looking for in this kind of group. And the other thing is, if you are available after Rebbetzin Golshevsky has finished her presentation and the program has officially ended, and you would like to stay and chat with me and try to brainstorm a little bit how to progress, because this is a new idea, a new venture. So you're welcome to stay a little bit and chat, and we can try to brainstorm together how best to continue this community that we're creating today. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to say ahead of time. Not too much, because I want to segue right away to Rebbetzin Golshevsky, who is the director of Shifty, which is an intermediate and advanced student women's learning community in Jerusalem, a place where study, prayer, personal work, and mitzvah observance comes together. She has teaching certificates from Yavna Teachers College in Cleveland, a BA from SUNY Buffalo in Classics and Judaic Studies. She's a well-known Torah educator in Jerusalem and abroad for 25 years with students all over the world. She's a published author, editor, translator, and her greatest love is teaching Torah. And on that introduction, I'd like to introduce you to Rebbetzin Yehudis Golshevsky, who will address us, all of our holy women here who work in Chevra Kadisha, on what our Kavana could be as we engage in this work.
Thank you so much, Elisa. I really appreciate the introduction and that you invited me Bichlal to come and participate. Before I even start, I want to just give a moment here to clarify something. For many years, I would go to, like the other end of the continuum. I would attend births for all of my students who wanted me to come to births. And so I attended many, many births over the course of my teaching years. Now I'm a little too busy, so I can't allow myself to be, on call like that. But in the old days, I would go, and I would have, over all these years, students who would say, what kavanas can you share with me for getting ready for the birth? And, what ideas should I have in mind? And all kinds of beautiful, high holy thoughts. And I always felt like the first thing I wanted to clarify is that in the Avodas Kodesh, in the holy work of the birth itself, it is the Kavana. The practice is the Kavana all by itself. Meaning, the birth is itself a holy place. The birth is itself a manifestation of the Shekhinah's presence. A birth is itself, God is there with you. And so how much holier can you make already the thing that is so holy? Do you have to come up with, do you have to have concepts in your head specific that you're kind of enveloping the experience in, or is it something that in and of itself, it suffices? So before I say anything that I want to share with you, I want to say that the work that you do in Chevra Kadisha, it is already the highest of high holy work. That's why you're called the Chevra Kadisha, the holy society. So the Holy Society is already doing the highest work. And one of the advantages that you have is that the outline, the practices that were set down, mainly the practices that we follow, were recorded in Mavaya book, the very famous Mavaya book, which was only written down about 500 years ago. But those practices are pretty much the core of that which serves as the customs worldwide. I mean, there are some variations from place to place in terms of what different communities do, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same. But those practices were set down by one of the greatest Mikubalim, one of the greatest Kabbalists and mystics who lived in the last 1,000 years. And when he prepared the Seder HaTahara, it's not as though he made it up. He had incorporated any number of different traditions, as well as teachings that came from the deeper sources, in order to kind of codify the pathway of Tahara. Now, Tahara, everyone knows that it means purification, correct? We all know Tahara means purification. But in Aramaic, that's not what Tahara means. Tahiru does not mean purity. Tahiru means light. It means shining light. And so Tahiru, you're involved in the process of Tahiru, not just cleansing, because you have, as you all know, there's Rechitza, there is the washing, and then there's Tahara. The washing is one level, and the Tahara is the second level. And so all of the organization of the stages, you're not involved in preparing the body for burial. It's important to bear in mind, you're involved in preparing the person for Techiyah. You're involved in preparing the person, the Jew, your fellow Jewess, because presumably I assume that you all live in communities where you have sufficient hands to be able to do the holy work, that women are helping only women, and men, according to the minhag, men are preparing only men. So you're preparing your fellow Jewish women for and sometimes girls, and sometimes younger, for Tchiyah, for the resurrection. And that's, I think, to start off with, an important thing to bear in mind, that it's the process is not for now. The process is for the long. It's the long way ahead. Now, before we get to the specifics, and I can't, of course, in an hour, I can't cover anything close to all the details of the process of Tahara. It's too complex and there's too much. Perhaps at some point in the future, we'll have opportunities to meet again, and I'll be able to talk over further things, but I'll be able to talk over at least some of it. But first of all, I want to talk about burial as a whole, meaning to have more of a foundation, because what everyone knows and doesn't know, it's impossible to come in knowing, right? I don't know how deep is your preparation for the work that you do, what training is provided in the Chevra Kadisha itself for in terms of hashkafa, in terms of perspective and deeper learning. I'm not aware, because I'm not a member of the Holy Society. And actually, I have to tell you, I'm gonna make a personal confession. When I was in seminary, I went to seminary in Cleveland for 2 years. When I was in my first year, at the end of my first year, I was very close with a family. The husband was an emergency room physician, and the wife worked in the Chevra Kadisha. And I asked her, after a lot of soul searching, I asked her if she could ask the Rav of the town, who was of that part of town, who was in charge of the Chevra Kadisha, Rav Hershkovitz, if he would consider, even though I was single, if he would consider allowing me to help with the Chevra Kadisha, which is against the minhag. It's not customary practice to take an unmarried woman to help in the Chevra Kadisha, unless, of course, there's no choice. unless there's no choice. And Cleveland being a town that had plenty of observant women, there was no reason to choose to have me come. And so she asked him. She didn't ask my reasons. She asked him, and he sent a message back. Find out why she wants to. So I said, well, it's kind of a story. When I was in university, I was before I was a classics Judaic studies, I was doing pre-med, and so I had for one full year an anatomy and physiology labs on every Friday, and we used the cadavers from the medical school for a demonstration lab. And for every Erev Shabbos for a year, I had to go into Shabbos with like the dead on my hands, so to speak. And that was something that, and the degree of desecration of the bodies that takes place in that setting is really very profound. And I felt like I really needed to do a tikkun. I felt like I really had, I had to make repair, and I wanted very much to make repair. And so when I was in Cleveland after that, I wanted to know if maybe I could do something, anything to help. And she told my story to the Rav, and he came back and he said, her intentions are very good, but we still can't have her help because I can't go against what is the prevalent custom, but it's very admirable. So when I was asked to participate, I just want to, first of all, offer my thanks because it gives me an opportunity to also do something in the realm of Chevra Kadisha, even if I'm not physically able, and I was never able to be involved in the hands-on in Chevra Kadisha. So I want to thank you. Okay. Now, so in terms of having a perspective for the burial, just preparing our fellow Jews for burial. And it's not for the burial, it's for the Tchiyah. So it's for the resurrection, it's for what will be later. The Ramchal explains in Derech Hashem that the process of the burial is an interim stage, meaning the disintegration of the body that is to come, is an interim stage that's necessary for the soul to achieve its rectification, meaning we have two stages happening at the same time. After a person's soul leaves this world, so the soul rises on high in order to go through its kind of holding pattern. It goes through its holding dynamic of a certain degree of cleansing, a certain degree of reward, which is called also lower Gan Eden. And lower Gan Eden, the Gan Eden Hatachton, lower paradise, is also called Tehiru. It's also called Tahara. It's the place that's called pure. It's the place of purity. It's a place of light. So the body goes through its decomposition, and it's necessary because it's happening simultaneously. The body and the soul, even when they separate only for a relatively short while. And they separate for however long it has to be, everyone in their own story, everyone in their own way. They separate, but even when they're separate, they're not really separate. Because as the body decomposes, as it deteriorates, so the soul is also going through its process of rectification, and then they both become they become a new refined substance. Now, one of the things that's wondrous is that the body going through its deterioration and its disintegration is called becoming a new refined substance, which from our perspective, it's becomes nothing, so to speak. It's as if it becomes nothing. And the Ramchal explains, no, that's the way it becomes a new refined substance, through its becoming nothing. Because the ultimate act of kapara, of atonement for the body, is to be absorbed in the earth. And those who are doing the work in Chutz Haaretz, outside of Israel, your role, the Ma'avar book says, your role is even more important than in Israel. Because in Eretz Yisrael, the earth does a lot of the work. The earth itself does most of the work. And so the main objective is just to get the body into the earth as soon as possible and as directly as possible. But when it comes to Chevra Kadisha and Chutz Haaretz, your thoughts and your intentions and your tefillas, your prayers on behalf of the nifter, of the nifteres, while you're preparing them to go and meet the earth, that's like creating a kind of, it creates a protective envelope for the person's body, so that when they go into the earth outside of Eretz Yisrael, which is not, it's full of obstacles in a certain way, because the cleansing power of the earth, as it says, v'chiper admato amo, and his earth will atone for his people. So being outside, even though the custom is, yes, to bring earth from Eretz Yisrael, right? That there should be earth from Eretz Yisrael that's in the Aron and so on, that the customs of incorporating the earth of Eretz Yisrael that should be incorporated into burial practices in Chutz La'aretz is also protective. But the Mavarya Bog says the main protection is in the Chevra Kadisha itself. In saying your psukim and saying your verses and doing your acts of tahara in every step of the way, everything that you do is a kind of substitute practice, if you could say such a thing. It's a kind of substitute practice for the lack of being in Eretz Yisrael. So you're basically like the bit of earth from Eretz Yisrael, you wind up being the earth of Eretz Yisrael for the person who has passed when you're in Chevra Kadisha and Chutz La'aretz. Now, I'm going to go through like sort of in order from, let's say, I'm going to pick just bits and pieces from the practice because I can't run through the whole practice. So we'll just say, if we have another opportunity at some point in the future, we'll go back and talk about things that we didn't talk about this time. So the body is laid with the feet to the door, correct? Now, when the nifter or the niftaris is placed with feet to the door, so that's also an area of Kavana. What does it mean to lie with feet to the door? Now, the truth is, among certain Hasidim, it's always customary to say, everyone in the end lies with their feet to the door. That means to say, like, there's all kinds of different folk ways of saying, nothing lasts, and the things of this world are not to be, they don't stay with us forever. And in the end, everyone lies with their feet to the door. Now, when you have the feet to the door, what is the significance of feet being towards the door and the head being in the pnim? The idea of the head being in the middle of the room or facing or into the center area of the room as opposed to the door. What are we doing? Now, is this the kind of thing that when you train in Chevra Kadisha that you talk about all the details or no? Or you just taught what to do? I'm curious about. You are taught or you're not taught too much?
No, we're not taught.
We're not
Okay.
talking about.
Because I don't want to tell things that everybody knows. If everybody knows, then I don't want to say. Okay, so if it's not something that's discussed, so then we'll talk now first about the feet. Because even in just the laying of the body of feet to the door, and people are so careful about this that they will, in life, they won't lie with feet to the door, correct? There are many people who are careful that they never lie with feet facing towards the door. The bed shouldn't be laid with feet to the door. They shouldn't be lying down on a couch with feet towards the door. Some people have a consciousness because it's only the dead who are laid with feet to the door. Now your feet, it's called in the Sifrei Kabbalah, in the deeper works, that's called Raglin. The whole area of Raglin, of the feet, are the areas of your life, your human life, where you cannot avoid being a material person. According to the works of Kabbalah and Hasidus, all of them use the same terminology of raglin, feet in Aramaic, which means like you could be the biggest Luftmensch in the world. You could be a person whose head is full of all kinds of big ideas and whose body you're touching, you keep your hands clean and you're just floating through the world. But there's a place on your body where no matter what you do, unless you jump once in a while or dance once in a while, or, you're attached to the ground. So your grounded aspect means your earthly life, your need to take care of your basics, and also the place where your desires catch you, right? That's called your area of raglin. That's how it's referred to. And it has to do mainly with the main three human preoccupations of food and intimacy and money. Those are the three main areas. Raglin are not two, there are three. There's two areas of the feet, not 2 feet, there's 3 feet, not 2 legs, 3 legs. So those 3 areas of the feet, which are considered to be that's like basic human challenges, human temptations. When we lay feet to the door, what are we saying? Goodbye. All the area of raglin, of this person, the Chevra Kadisha lays the body with the feet to the door to say, you are released from all of the entanglements that you had in your lifetime to the area of raglin. There's no more money. There's no more intimacy. There's no more food. All of the things that preoccupied you, where you stumbled and you fell and you had so many different temptations throughout your life, all of this is gone from you. We lay your feet to the door and we say goodbye to all of these things. And what stays in the pnim? What stays in the room? The head. That means to say the higher, what we're saying is the higher part of you, oh, mechubedika niftaris, oh, mechubedika, oh, dearly departed, oh, precious neshama. What stays in What doesn't leave you? The part of you that's your soul, which is embodied by the upper part of the body. So head in the middle, towards the middle of the room, feet to the door. And that's even the way we use it colloquially, feet to the door. Everybody in the inlights, feet to the door is like, this is not important and that is not important. And let's stay focused on the things that are important. So Chevra Kadisha, a holy society of women who are the Chevra Kadisha, you get to have reminders all the time of where the Rosh is and where the Raglayim are. Where is the head? The head has to be in the center. And what happens in the end for everybody, all of us in the end, the feet are to the door. Okay, now, when, let's say overall, in the room, so generally speaking, taharas are, can you do a tahara alone? Do you do your taharas alone? No, because you actually need, you need more than one person to do the tahara. Now, the idea of in your own society, like you come in, I'm sure when you were trained for Chevra Kadisha, even though, again, I didn't have the privilege of having the training, I only have from the Sfarim. So you'll know better than me. And if I say something that's incorrect, so you have to tell me that I'm making an assumption that's not true, because I have only from the Sfarim, I don't have from the experience. The closest I have is that my sister, who's actually here tonight, today. So my sister and I had the great privilege of being with my father when he left this world. And that was, I think, very, we got a taste of the work of the Chevra Kadisha. And the truth is that the Sfarim say that it's better for the person's friends and beloved ones to do tahara. That's what it says. And why is it? Because they know the person. And by knowing the person, they know what to say, and they know what psukim. It's really quite, the psukim, the order of verses that you have to recite throughout the process of the washing and the preparation and the tahara, all of this is kind of like it's derech hamelech. It's like a pathway that the Mavarya book lays out so that everybody should be buried with proper kavod. Everybody should be buried with proper honor. But the truth is that he also says that if someone is a great Torah scholar, so there are things that could be added, or if you know the person, you could say other verses that relate to the parts of the body as you are working on the different parts of the body, so that you should be able to incorporate more of what the person was in life, in holiness in their body. Because what you're doing as you're preparing the body is you're emphasizing, and we'll see as we go through the verses, at least a little bit of it, it's about the holiness of the body, the perfection of the body. And it's a little bit, that's the wonder and it's kind of like paradox, or the beauty and the pele. That's the word, really, not a paradox and not a wonder. It's a pele of the entire process of the tahara, of the preparation altogether. Is here we have the inert body. The body is no longer inhabited, and when we treat the inert body, the non-animate body, with such an appreciation of what its holy potential was throughout life, and what a body really is. And that's really the idea of bringing in all those verses from Shir HaShirim, of moving from the head down, right? All of the verses that are said about the different parts of the body. So this is like breathing holiness back into the body. Oh, this is what the body was. This is what the body could be. This is what the body could have been. This was about the body was meant to be. This is what the body was made to be. So by sending the body, because it's really, the nifter is always, the soul is still attached, there's still attachment there. The Mavarya book says this is why the Chevra Kadisha has to be very careful about what they say, and they have to be very careful not to talk too much. And I'm sure that that's how you receive training, that you shouldn't be talking too much. Okay, but did they explain why? So it's not considered kavod for the niftar. It's not considered to be honorable, but it's more than that, because it says that until the language is until the stone is over the kever. That means until the even is mitgolel. That means until the final sealing of the grave, the person has awareness. And the Mavarya book says it's like we have awareness in dreams. That's the language he uses. It's like the way we sometimes have an inkling of things, or we might know things or have a sense of things in a kind of subdued consciousness. that is a different sort of consciousness. He says that's the way Niftarim experience the way people talk about them and what's being said in their presence, in the presence of the body, until the burial. So all that while is considered to be very sensitive. It's very sensitive moments, or hours, or however long it is. And Shmira is a different story. The reason why the body has to be protected is because, having been emptied out of its vitality, it's now like a kind of, it's like a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. And so it being the case that there are always in the atmosphere negative spiritual energies, which are known by various names, chitzonim, shindalid, v'chulei. We have all kinds of names to talk about the fact that they're the kind of like free radicals of the spiritual world, we'll say. So the body is in a vulnerable state because there's no animation in the body. The soul is not taking up space in the body anymore. It's not space physically, obviously, but it's life. So the life is gone, and now the body is like a bit of a vulnerable receptacle in a sense. And so it's the obligation of those who are attending to the body, attending to the nifteres, to make sure that psukim are being said, and that thoughts are good. And there's even question as to whether do you have to say psukim, do you have to say verses, do you have to recite Tehillim, let's say? Is it enough to just sit and think good thoughts, right? Is it enough to just, and there are those who say, Gesher Chaim says, there's almost nothing as powerful as just being in a state of teshuvah, right? To just feel, to feel a sense of one's own mortality and frailty and vulnerability and need to repent. This is the biggest merit that there is for the nifteres. So it's like we have the idea of protection. There's an obligation to protect, but there's also the obligation to not only to protect, but also to it's a kind of kindness. It's an act of kindness. I can afterwards, if you want, I see someone asked if there's notes. Perhaps what I'll do is I'll send out sources if you want. I can send out afterwards a kind of outline with source materials. You can look further in it if you want. So the Mavaya book speaks about the fact that the person's soul sees something, experiences, has some kind of consciousness, and they're acutely aware of how vulnerable they are. They're acutely aware of how they could be judged about things that could be said about them that's negative or something like this. And this is something that causes them pain. And so it's part of the obligation of the Chevra Kadisha to be attuned to it. Now, when you begin the process of, you have preliminary tefillot, right? So you have preliminary tefillot that you say before you begin the process of rechitza, correct? I know from practice, I know from study, but you have chamol, you have mechila, and you have chamol. So there are different aspects of it. First of all, mechila, when you ask forgiveness. So the asking of forgiveness of the nifter is also because you've assumed an obligation to do something that really requires Kavana meis is a very great mitzvah. It's a very important mitzvah, and so you want to make sure that you've already sort of defined your intentions to do the duty that you've assumed in the best possible way with the greatest attention to the kavod of the person who's before you. So, of course, there's the asking mechila, there's preliminary, and afterwards, right? There's your intention that you set ahead, and then there's the process that you go through. And then when you're finished, you're going to ask mechila again, because it could be that there might have been something that occurred in the course of the tahara that afterwards you want to be able to ask forgiveness for, perhaps having been a little too not careful enough, or certainly there are things that can happen that are considered to be in the course of the tahara that are considered to be not mechubed for the mace. I'm going to be just frank about it, right? Because we have to be clear that filth, dirt on the body, which can happen throughout the process. There's a lot of discussion in the Sfarim about different ways, the significance of different kinds of impurities, physical impurities that are on the body. And so in the course of the tahara, Tammy says you ask mechila again and again throughout the tahara. So, but this with the same nusach, or you only ask, you only say a short phrase, or you have a full nusach that you say?
Full nusach only at the end, but just general
Right. So the full
mechila
nusach,
throughout.
that's what I said. When you start talking about what the customs are, I can only see what Gesher Chaim says for Minhag Yerushalayim, and then there's Mavar Yabok. And in terms of what each community does, there can be minor variations. You don't have to get stuck on. We don't have to get too stuck on the details because the process overall is similar. But we have here, Masha says we don't have a specific nusach. Yeah. So it has to do with whatever is done in any particular community. Now, it's not, and again, it's not because there are halachas of Kavana mes, correct? Like to honor the dead, we have halachot, and we have halachot of overall about certain practices, but this is all in the category of specific minhagim, of customs. And so there is a certain amount of variation. It's not really a question so much of what's halachic practice. It's not really about that. Certain things are halachic, but many are not. They're minhagic. Okay, now, so we have the idea of the mechila, just asking for mechila at whatever point it is. It's again an acknowledgement. Isn't almost all of it minig? Yes, Masha said correct. The process of what the tahara looks like, yes. Burial, that there has to be burial, yes. Burial in the ground, you have to bury in the ground. Burying in the ground, so that although we had a period of times when we couldn't bury in the ground, and we had stone sarcophagi v'chule for certain periods, but that we'll call it an erech elyon. I don't want to call it a halacha. We'll call it an erech elyon. Certain things are considered to be of utmost importance, and then the practice about how you do it varies from place and from time. Like for instance, the washing. Now, washing is, or the dressing, right? So washing and dressing. Now, washing and dressing are so deeply entrenched as burial practices for Jews that it's hard to call them exactly only, it's not exactly only minig, it's minig, but it has such a deeply entrenched roots in our practices that it's not something that you can say, oh, this is, we don't call it just minhag. Now, to go back to the tefillot. So you have the way in which you ask forgiveness of the niftar. Then you have the, if you do this, right, it depends, I guess, on, I think it's fairly standard to also offer a tefillah on behalf of the niftar. See, there's different layers. And once it's your engagement with the person, and then there's also what you're doing on behalf of the person that they can't do themselves. In certain ways, that's similar to what happens. I was talking before about the dirt on the body. Thank you for reminding me. Hold on one second. So in doing something on behalf of the niftar that he or she can't do themselves any longer, this has some similarity to the ways in which certain tefillot are offered on behalf of the person who's on their deathbed, who cannot pray any longer. Meaning there's a kind of continuum of the person being already past the point of being able to do something for themselves. How can, for example, if a person is not in the situation to be able to say vidui for themselves before they pass away, can someone with them say the vidui? Yes, of course they do. Now, how could it be? How can it be that I can say vidui on behalf of somebody else? Isn't it something that's personal to them? How can I say vidui for them? No, that's part of the mutual responsibility and achrayus. This is a kind of arevus, a kind of mutual obligation that we have for each other. And it's possible for us to do this kind of spiritual work for each other because we are all intrinsically connected to one another. So you'd say, how can you say chamol? How can you say chamol, offer prayers that Hashem should have mercy and pity on the person who's passed away, and that they should they should have a full rectification for their soul, etc. How can you do it? You do it because you can do it, and you're in a position to do it, and it's a kindness to be able to do it. So it's not only a quality of kavod, but it's also fits into the category what we call chesed shel emes. It's chesed shel emes. It's the final and most true of all chesedim, of all acts of kindness, because this is something that the person really cannot do any longer for themselves. Now that's and it's comparable in certain ways to tefillot at the end of life, because that also can be a situation where a person cannot do it for themselves. They have you though, because you can do on behalf of someone else things that they cannot do for themselves. Now, Moria asked about dressing with the opening in the front. Okay, so hold on a second. The opening in the front is very interesting. That's also preparation for Tchiyah. The Gesher Chaim says that the opening in the front is meant to symbolize that the garment is going to be at some point removed. That the garment is going to come off because the person is going to get up and need fresh clothing and come out of their grave clothes. So the fact that it's not like a hermetic seal is meant to symbolize that there's a future for the person that goes beyond the clothes of the grave. Now let's go back. So dirt on the body. Now in the process of the preparation, so there's discussion in this farm about the possibility that after having had one stage of cleaning, that certain fluids could emerge from the body, that certain substances can emerge from the body, and in which case it has to be cleaned again, and so on. And all of this also goes into the issue of mechila. The Zohar Kodesh says that when there's dirt on the body, so it's something that's very, very painful for the niftar. Very, very painful for them, because it says the physical body parallels the state of the spiritual body, of the nefesh. They're in tandem to each other. And so when more shmutz is revealed on the body, so then it's painful to the neshama, because the neshama says, oh, I should already be cleansed from this. I should be already past having anything on my surface anymore. I shouldn't have anything else already obstructing the cleanliness of my body that's going into the ground. And so it's a kindness. Again, any time that you see that there's something that you missed, something that emerged, so then it's again an act of kindness and kavod for the mace, because the neshama specifically, because the neshama suffers from having the fact of its earthiness and its not only its earthiness, its vulnerability to decay and deterioration revealed. And so the nails, Golda Fried, it pains you can't take off the nails. Yeah, the Sfarim talk about different kinds of ornaments of the body that are painful afterwards for the nifter to not be able to rid itself of. And this is something that you can daven. You can only daven, right? It's your, that's part of your avodah. That's part of your work that you do. Now let us go on a little bit further. Okay. Now, Vayan Vayomer, when you start to do the act of the washing. So the act of the washing, the minhag, as far as I know, is to start with the verse that relates to the begadim tzoim of Sefer Zachariah, correct? That's the practice as far as I know. Now, the context of the verses there is about the Kohen Gadol who was wearing filthy garments, and he was told by the prophet Hasiru b'gadim atzoim, that you should take off the filthy garments and put on the shining garments. Now, I want to just share with you like a kavana for the pasuk, because it's something that applies to everybody. It's not only about the work that you do. The concept of b'gadim tzoim, what is a beged? What's the garment? Okay, so as you're busy with the garments, the cleaning of the body is itself the garment. Even though there'll be a halbasha, there's going to be a halbasha, a dressing. After the tahara, there'll be a dressing and burial clothes. But before then, you're reminded not the begadim tzoim is not about cloth garments. The filthy garments of the verse is about the body itself. And the body is called, when the body is in a state of all of what are called the bigdei hanefesh. Okay, hold on one second. Dina asked about burn victims. Oy, Hashem. Let's set aside for 1 second. I saw the question. We'll see if we can get to it. Now, so the begadim tzoim, the body itself, is called in its state of pre-rectification, of pre-resurrection. Meaning this is true for all of us. It's not about the niftarim, it's about us too. So the bigdei hanefesh, the garments of the nefesh, as the Balatanya explains, are the lower midot. And not only the lower midot, but also thought, speech, and action. are also related to the Big Nefesh. They also are called garments of the soul, but especially the lower midot, the lower attributes. Now that means that everybody has, and the person who's left this world has already lost there's no more work in the realm of this world and making rectifications and repairs, correct? That's what it means to leave. Why are niftarim called niftarim? Because hem pturim min mitzvos, because they're finished here doing the work that they were supposed to do. Now we could talk about, about whether they have to come back at certain times. That's a different story, but at least for this chapter, they have left. Now, when they're left, it means that the work is done. So begadim tzoe means here, this body and these attributes and my character traits and all the stuff that has not been fixed throughout my lifetime is called begadim tzoim, and that's true for everybody. They're called, now tzoim means filth encrusted. It means encrusted with feces, actually. That's what tzoam means in Hebrew. So the begadim tzoim means that they are full of psolet, extra, the stuff that was not necessary. And that's what we leave behind. So when the Chevra Kadisha says, take off the begadim tzoim, take them off, it means that the body is no longer the place anymore of being the repository of a person's failings and shortcomings. That's finished. That's in the lifetime. The big hanefesh, the garments of the soul, they can get encrusted with all kinds of mess. But once a person leaves this world, the Chevra Kadisha is in charge of preparing the body for techiyah, preparing the person for the long journey of we'll call it the sleep, the long wait, until the body will be in proper condition to be able to rise with a rectified neshama. And so the body is no longer doing work. The body is only preparing itself for the future. Now, the process of teshuvah of the body, that's what Ramchal explains, is specifically in burial. The repentance of the body is in the humbling effect of burial in the earth. That's why earth is considered to be the ultimate agent of kapara, of this atonement, because the earth is the element of the four elements of which everything is spoken of being created, of earth and air and fire and water. Earth is the humblest. Earth is the down to the bottom. You came from afar, you go back to afar. You came from the earth, you go back to the earth. Adam Arishon, why do people have to be buried? Human beings have to be buried because of the sin of Adam and Chava, which the sages explain, and Ramchal talks about this at length, that was a sin of pride. And so what happens? Death and burial is considered to be the ultimate humbling experience that brings us back down to the place of total humility and disintegration and deterioration until we become fully humbled. And when we are fully humbled, that's called, it's time for Tchiyah. That's the preparation for Tchiyah. That's preparation for resurrection. So when you recite your verses and you start off with remove the begadim atzoim, all of the verses that you say they're so beautiful and they're so illuminated and they're so inspiring and they're so full of light, because it's like you're giving the body you're sending it off in its final perfected way, which is the most prepared it's going to get for its should everyone be saying them, not just one person? Alyssa asks. It depends. Usually the Sfarim talk about there being like Rosh HaChavura, that usually there's like one person who's the most knowledgeable, and that's the person who generally is most familiar with the text and who'll say this and who'll say the psukim, and then other people help. But it's not that there's anything wrong with more than one person saying it. It just depends on whatever is the local practice. Usually the assumption is that most people can't do too much at one time, meaning if they're reciting, then it's harder for them to be focused on the work of their hands. And so therefore it's better to kind of, divide up whatever is the obligations. But no, the original, from the original format, it's that anybody who can say will say, because it has to do with being mechaven. And the Mavar Yabok says that he even says quite clearly, you don't even need interpretation of these verses, because all of the verses that run through the body are also clearly shining a light into the body. You don't have to interpret them, they just do it. But each one of them does have its own world of meaning, which he alludes to, but he says, I'm not going to spend too much time because that would be a whole other work. It's very, he doesn't let's see. Should members of the Chevra Kadisha pause? That's asking a question in practice. So that's something that you have to ask whoever is the Rav Mikomi, whoever is the Rav of the place and who gives advice to the Chevra Kadisha. You ask, should we do this? Should we do that? I have no way of telling you because I'm not, that I don't have any kind of, tefillah should not slow down the process. Yes, that's true. But again, doing it with dispatch is considered to be kavod hames in any case, correct? It's like, you don't want to rush, because you want to be mechaber. At the same time, every moment that the person is not already buried is considered to be a violation of their kavod. So it's a balance for all Chevra Kadishas. Yes. Okay. How are we doing time? We still okay? Shall we continue? Okay, we will continue. Now, so the Begadim Tzoim relates also to putting on the shining garments, right? The end of the verse is that you should put on the shining garments. What are the shining garments? The shining garments are the Bigdei Kehuna. That's that's Tzado, Kohen Gadol. That's the context of the psukim there in Zechariah, is that he's going to have these filthy garments taken off of him and he's going to receive clean, fresh Bigdei Kehuna. Now his Kohanic garments, that's what you're going to be preparing. That's what you prepare. That's what the Niftarim are dressed in. So our Kohanic garments, I'm sure you know the history of how it became that we have standard garments. Yes, everyone knows. The standard burial garments were a takana. They were a special enactment of Rabban Gamliel. So Rabban Gamliel he was exceedingly wealthy. He came from the house of David. He came from the family of David HaMelech. And in his time, which was, at the end of the Second Temple period, so the practice of burial customs had so gotten classified. I don't mean classified in the sense of secretive. I mean distinguished by class, meaning they became a problem of class distinction, that the poor were impoverishing themselves further in order to buy fancy burial garments, because the wealthy buried in fancy burial garments, it was considered to be like you were terrible people if you didn't pay for very expensive burial clothes, and people who already didn't have money to eat because they were afraid of violating kavod hamet, so they would impoverish themselves further and endanger themselves. So Rabban Gamliel, he said, when I die, he made an enactment. When I die, Begadim Tzoim, I'm sorry, Tovenda. It's in Sefer Zechariah, and Begadim Tzoim literally means excrement in encrusted garments. That's what it means. So, and the reference here is like the body with all of its vulnerabilities and all of its temptations, all of its failings, all of its shortcomings, all of that is lifted away, is all removed. And for the long sleep and for the eventual waking up, we dress in. We're in the process of getting the person ready for the proper garment. And the proper garment, from the time of Rabban Gamliel onward, was basically along the pattern of the Bigdei Kehuna, of not the Bigdei Kehuna, not the Kohen Gadol's garments, but the regular garments of the Kohen Hediot, of the regular Kohen, which is one of the reasons why we have those who I don't know how it is in Chutz La'aretz. Here, you can make a choice as to whether you're going to use whether the garments, the tachrichim, are going to be made of muslin or whether they're going to be of pishtan, of linen. You do this also? You give the families an option? Is that the way it works in America? I don't know. It's standard. It's all standardized.
The linen garments are generally more expensive than the other, and so there are times when the family may opt to spend less money, but generally we use the linen garments in our Chevra Kadisha. Anyways, that's what we try to do. And if we are going to an area far away from LA, we'll bring them with us just to make sure.
So in Yerushalayim, the standard is a kind of cotton muslin, and then the fine linen, it's a muslin, and the fine linen is used. You have to pay extra for it, and of course the fine linen, that is the closest parallel to Bigdei Kehuna. The Bigdei Kehuna were made out of pishtan; they were made out of linen, And the whole idea of I don't want to say the whole idea, but part of the idea behind the, it's not a standard practice. There are some places where you can, lav dafka, not necessarily do they have the linen. So I can't say that, it's clear that from community to community, there could be differences. Now, in the use of the linen, the fine linen, so linen, we have the fabric linen is the textile is manufactured through the application of force to a plant fiber. And it's considered to parallel, not like wool. Wool is a different story. Wool, you just shear off the sheep. It represents chesed. It represents chasadim. Divine kindness, you just shear off the sheep, yes, and then you have to card it and you have to spin it and you have to weave it, but you don't have to beat it in order to make it what it is. But flax has to be beaten in order for it to become fibrous enough to be able to work it. So in all of the classic sources, going back to the beginning of the Torah itself, because we had two brothers, one was a wool man and the other one was a flax man. They were called Cain and Hevel. And so Cain was the flax man. And he brought up his pishtan, his flax plants, and that's what he brought up for his offering. Now that's the idea of the physicality, that the materiality can be transformed into holiness. It means even down to the lowest place in materiality, you can make it into holiness. That's what linen represents. So to bury someone in linen garments is a way of saying this human being is a soul that came down to this world where everything is very harsh and very difficult. If you want to make spirituality out of things of this world, you must beat and beat and beat and beat. It doesn't just happen automatically. You must do a lot of work. And that's what's represented by the linen. That's pishtan. So the linen, when we clothe the person in linen garments at the end, so this is a way of saying, here you go, released from this world, where we're going to attest that you did the job of a soul that comes down into this world, to come down to the place of the material and do the hard work of beating spirituality out of the material, of like it's kind of like a thrashing kind of a work, that we didn't just come here and just take things as they are, but that the Jew came to the world of the material and created and generated a spiritual existence out of a material existence. And that's the power, part of the power of the Pishtan. Now, so let's go on. So let's go to the Rechitza a little bit further on. Now, the verses from Shir HaShirim, basically moving down the body, right? So you start to move down the body and praise the body. And my son, he shows me well, where my son, one of our children, he's a medic for MADA. And so he's a paramedic. So I remember he spoke to me after the first time that a patient that at that point, it wasn't, the first time was that he came upon a call, he answered a call, and the person had already passed away by the time he got there. He wasn't there at the time of passing. The person had passed when he already got there. And we spoke about it afterwards. And I said, I tried to elicit from him, what was it like for you? How did you feel about it? This is a boy who grew, went to Hasidic yeshivas. It became, he kind of walked out into the world of being a bachor who works for MADA. And he's not necessarily all that talkative about his feelings. So I said, was it shocking for you? Was it difficult for you? What was it like for you? And he said, it was, I saw that the body after the person is not alive anymore. It's a body. It's a body. And you don't have a sense automatically of the Kedusha of the body. You don't automatically have a sense of the holiness of the body. So it's the Chevra Kadisha's task to make sure that the person does not leave this world, meaning the soul is still experiencing, has some consciousness that the body is not being approached as just a body. And who will do this if not the Chevra Kadisha? So we have all of our beautiful verses from Shir HaShirim, and we go down through the body in the state of praising the perfection of the body and the spirituality of the body. Because one of the main messages of Shmir, if I could say the main messages of Shir, you can't say something like that. Shir HaShirim is Kodesh Kadoshim. But one of the threads we could pull out from Shir HaShirim is, like I said before, is the inherent holiness of every part of the body. There's not a single part of the body that doesn't have inherent holiness, doesn't have possibility of holiness in it. And so Shir Hashirim is the perfect vehicle through which to accompany the Rechitza. Because in the Rechitza, you're not even up to the Tahara yet. The Rechitza, you're still doing the actual physical washing. Tahara is spiritual washing. Tahara afterwards, you're going to put mayim tahorim, and I don't know whether you follow the custom as I saw in Gesher Chaim. So I'm going to ask you, when you use teskabin, if you're using your big vessels, so if you're working two people, one person goes down the right side, and by the time you get to the feet, the other person starts the left side, and then you come back and go down the middle. Everyone does the same practice? That's what I'm asking. Yes, I got a yes, but is that true? So the question is, I'm asking because I want to know how you're doing your teskabin.
Yeah,
No,
can
we
I ask?
just use the cabin with 3 people.
You use
And
3, not
we
2.
pour them all together. Starting at the head, one does the right side, the other does the left side, and the other one does sort of down the head and throws it
Down
down.
the middle.
We never do
Okay.
it with 2 people.
Okay, no, it doesn't
we
have to
ta-
be 2 people. It can be done with as few as 2 people. That's
Are
all I
we
said.
talking about the washing or the tahara?
The tahara afterwards. The washing, washing I will talk about, but I mean the tahara afterwards.
We mean the tahara.
Yes.
So when Rabbi Zone gave us a training here, he said that we should all pour like a shower.
Okay, so I'm going to explain about the 2 different customs because I can see that there's not uniformity.
But during COVID, we did the pouring down each side
Interesting.
to minimize splashing.
Because they don't want splashing.
They want less splashing. Okay. But I'm just telling you that to do it down each side is not considered to be a lesser minhag. They just embody 2 different ideas. Okay. Now, when the water is poured from the top of the head like a rush, like one big rush. So this is in order to emulate Mayim Chayim. That's in order to emulate live spring water, because there are 7 different types of pools that can be used as a kosher mikveh, correct? There's 7 different types of bodies of water that can be used. Anagam, Biyam, Nahar, Nachal, Be'er, V'bor. We have different, not Be'er, Bor. We have different possible bodies of water, natural bodies of water, and a mikveh. But the best of all is called Mayim Chaim. A living wellspring is considered to be the highest of all possible sources of tahara, because we know, how do we know? Because there are certain types of tumah that in the time of the Beit HaMikdash could only be removed with Mayim Chaim. If there's a type of tum'ah, a type of impurity that can only be removed with one form of water, and the rest of them are not good enough, are not strong enough for it, so then the Mayim Chaim, the idea of the wellspring that just rushes, so that's emulated by everyone pouring from the top, and that is v'nozlim min Lebanon, right? V'nozlim min Lebanon, that the water is pouring down from the Lebanon. That's like what it says in Shir Hashirim, that the water pours, and that means the place of highest purity is here, and then it flows down and cleanses the rest of the place. Now, the truth, we have too much to talk about. It's already 8 o'clock. So I'm going to just finish off the point that I was making. And Mirz Hashem, if you decide that you want to meet again and continue, and we have many, many more details of practice to talk about, we can do it another time because there's only so much. Now, in terms of the right side, left side, in the middle, so this is the Gesher Chaim says this is in order to cover all of the qualities, the midot of the right side, because all of the organization of the spheros, of all of the divine attributes as they are embodied in the human being, because all of the divine attributes are embodied within the human being, correct? That's what the Sefer Tomid Dvorah teaches us, that human beings activate their divine attributes. That's called your Tselem Elokim, your divine image. You activate your divine attributes while you're in your body in the place of making choices. Now that the person is no longer active, nifter, nifteres, p'turim min mitzvos, their work here is done. So you come with clean water and you wash down the right side, the left side, and then the middle to bring balance to all of the place of all of the expression of all of the qualities, from the top of the head down to the feet, from the place of Chochmah Bina Das, from all of the mentalities, all of the ways of the person's thinking, through all of their emotional attributes and down to their physical attributes. Everything from the right side, which is more on the in the strength of of kindness, the left side, which is more the place of boundaries and strength, and then the middle, which is the place of balance. All of this is cleansed by the Chevra Kadisha to send the person out in the best possible way. I think we have to stop here. I can't tell you, I have hours and hours and more that we could do.
Yes.
But it's enough for today.
Yes.
And I hope that will be helpful. And
Yes.
Hashem Yazor in holy work, and holy work. And Ashrechen. Fortunate are you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please don't leave unless you have to.
I do have to leave. I am going to leave.
But thank you so much. We'll be in touch. And here we are. We're creating a community. We had about maybe 70, 75 people on this call. The goal is to create a community amongst us. So I will be sending out an email with a few things, a survey to ask what you want. Like, how do we create a community? Obviously, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to know. There's a lot to share, whether it's our intentions or it's also like our feelings, like I think women are good at sharing feelings. We could talk about our feelings perhaps, maybe have a panel conversation at our next meeting, April the 18th, please save that date. And I'd like to have a conversation with maybe the best way to continue interacting with each other. My vision is that it isn't every few months we have a gathering, it's that we somehow have conversation between us all the time, whether that's on a WhatsApp or a Facebook or what, on the core website, we could have a conversation space there. I'd like some feedback from you as to how to proceed, that we're all engaged. This is something that we're engaged in as a circle, not as a hierarchy. There's no hierarchy here. It's just trying to engage us as we grow and develop and connect with each other and network with each other and know each other and are given chizuk by each other. So that's the goal. And if anybody wants to jump in, tell me who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry I was super late, and I just wanted to thank you, Alyssa.
Are you Naomi Davis Brummer? Because I don't think
No,
so.
I don't know why it says that. I'm Gitty Fredman from Minneapolis, and I'm so proud that a bunch of our people were on this call. I'm sorry I was super late, but I just wanted to thank you so much for organizing this, and I hope we can have her again because Rebbetzin was amazing, and happy Purim, and thank you so much.
Good, wonderful. Anybody else? Please
I'm
introduce yourself. Tell me
Tove Siegel from Los Angeles. And I organized several years ago Women's Chevra Kadisha here because we didn't have an official one. And this was spectacular. I mean, I know Yehudis for a very long time, but it's wonderful to hear her teaching. And I'm very excited, Elisa, that you have organized this and are wanting to have continuous communication between all of us. I think it's spectacular. So thank you so much.
I would like to address the concern about the nails.
Who's talking?
Elaine from Allentown, PA. We contacted Rabbi Zone and asked about the nails that are painted with gel. And he said, all you have to do is cut each nail to show that it's been addressed. And so we felt good about that.
Thank you.
Cut the nail, you said?
Yes, cut each nail. Make a cut on each nail.
I'll make a cut on each.
I never heard that, excuse me. I never
we're
heard
talking
that either, by Zone.
That's what
I-
Talking about the
Zone
nails that cannot be removed, that no matter
I
what.
work very close with Rabbi Zone. I never heard him say
Maybe
to cut
some-
the nails.
Maybe somebody could ask Rabbi Zone.
I'm gonna
get back to the
echo
group.
Rena Horowitz.
Elise,
I'm gonna
Hello?
echo Rena
One
Horowitz.
at a time. We need to go one at a
I
time.
also
ladies.
work with Rabbi Zone, and he's never said that.
So Rabbi Zone is
told
having,
us, if I could tell you, Rabbi Zone told us that we should leave, if we can't get the gel off, we just leave it on. There's nothing we can do. And I've never heard anything about cutting the nails. Nothing.
Right. Rabbi Zone is having a webinar tonight.
exactly.
You know about it, and he's going to have a question and answer.
Oh,
after
All right,
the
so ask
webinar.
him.
Yeah,
Good
it's
question.
at 5 o'clock West Coast time.
Right.
Whatever your time zone is, you can log on there. And
Can you post the link?
I'm going to see if I
Yes.
can do that. Can you?
I can post the link. Also, I'd like maybe somebody in this group could ask that question, and then we'll feed it back to the group if anybody can't.
I'm stepping in for Elaine because she had asked the question. For me, it was a question that I had.
And it's ironic, that is the answer we got. So it'll be great to have a definitive answer from Rabbi Zone.
I think, thank you. I think it's very critical to realize that we are different communities with different minhagim, and there might be different communities that are going to get different answers. And I think that we all need to go into this respecting the guidance, the rabbinic guidance that each of us are getting, because we are all coming from very diverse places, very diverse minhagim.
I'd like to give a shout out to Alyssa Felder, who's my dear friend, and because she exemplifies humility, and she is an unbelievable teacher in her own right. And I just want to say that we brought her in a few years ago to our funeral home, Jewish funeral home, and we invited the entire community, all Jews, and people, representatives from all of the synagogues and shuls came. And it was so important. And she spoke about Chevra Kadisha and why Jews bury and why we don't cremate. And I would love to see more of that. I know you're bringing in speakers and I think that's wonderful. But at the same time, I just want to say that Alyssa should be teaching in our communities to Jews that don't know, that don't even know about Chevra Kadisha, that don't know to even ask for this. And I think that I want to see that happen. And I want to encourage my friend Alyssa to put herself out there in that way as well.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And like, I used to keep it super quiet that I was on the Chevra Kadisha because I thought like, let me do this stuff privately. And then when I realized how many Jews don't know there's anything wrong with cremation, I was like, it's upon us to talk about it, to open up the channels of communication. Even if we don't bring out a formal, like what you're saying, of bringing out a formalized speaker and having a formal outreach education is one thing, but then there's just, if we start talking about it more people will know about it just from me saying, oh, I have a Tara this morning. What's a Tara? Oh, I'm fasting today. It's the Chevra Kadisha fast. What's the Chevra Kadisha? I just talk about it more in conversation instead of trying to keep it so private, as a window to educate less knowledgeable people who aren't knowledgeable about the importance.
Alyssa, where do you live? Where are you based?
I lived in Rhode Island.
Okay, so you're
Tova Hinda, I want to say, first of all, I'm from Los Angeles, and Tova Hinda is inspirational, and she really has inspired me and many women to be involved. And I run a very big outreach organization, and we are planning a Zoom series of one-shot information on Jewish burial, because there have been so many cremations later. And I would like to know if there is anybody to, maybe Alyssa, we could talk about it in terms of presentation to really uninformed people, how to do it in the most important way and most succinct way, so it's not going on and people can have a depth of understanding. And my son and I run this organization, and we're planning it now. So if maybe we could be in touch.
Sure.
You know, well, we probably
I suggest, I'm from Boca Raton. I don't know if anybody hears me. Yvette Cabeblom.
What's your name?
Yvette Cabeblom.
Welcome.
I'm running the Chevra Kadisha from Boca Raton, and we're very close to Rabbi Lyons and to Rabbi Zone. And they were talking about cremation. We're doing a lot into that outreach. I really suggest you should get in touch with Rabbi Zone or either with Rabbi Lyons here in Boca. And about the nails, it's been a big issue everywhere because taharas have been changing. When we started doing taharas many, many years ago, we never had the issue about gels. We never had the issue of acrylics. We never had the issue of tattoos. We never have issue about so many other things that women and young people been doing it. I've been working in that already for a while with Rabbi Zone and with Rabbi Lyons to figure out that all our Hebras, they should do the same thing. Because if a person is been in a hospital for 2-3 weeks and the nails, I'm personally use acrylics, for me it's a shame to go out with my half nails. So why will them be ashamed to the soul to have half nails? So that's something we have to be addressing very, very careful, because some people could get very embarrassed about that. So Anyhow,
I
I suggest
just want
everybody
to
to go
go
to
back to
tonight's
the idea
webinar.
of this community. So this community looks like we could got lots of different places
Right.
where we can interact with each other and we can mechazek each other. We can learn from each other. We can share with each other. We can support each other. Some of the things that, like the specifics of exactly what your Chevra does, I don't think that's the domain of this community. We're not addressing what your minhag is versus your. It might be interesting to hear, but we're not looking to change anybody's minhagim. We're looking to create a community of women who maybe like Yehudis was talking to us. There was a lot there, and I read about it a lot, and I learned so much from her presentation, just how to think and what Kavana to have and how to approach different things that we're doing, and even the feet to the door thing. Like I know about feet to door, but I learned so much from what she said, and we can provide more of those kinds of why versus what's as well. And then feelings, like I was thinking maybe we could have a panel conversation if anybody would like to volunteer, like how you came to be in the Chevra Kadisha. Who are you? Like, I'm so curious what led you into this work, what you get from the work, how you feel about your work. Like even that aspect could be something that we as a community speak to each other about.
Alyssa, I would volunteer to be on that panel because this is not the mitzvah I would have chosen. This is the mitzvah the community needed.
Mm-hmm.
So giving that aspect of it, I would totally volunteer because people need to know every time. And I'm a leader now. I've been doing this for 12 years. And I've become a leader. And every time I walk in the room, I say a little prayer. God, Hashem, I should not pass out. I should not faint. This should be a tahara that I could be able to handle. And that's my tefillah every time I walk in.
Yeah. I also
Very nice. I've also volunteered.
You know what? Email me that you would like to be on the panel, and that's April 18th. We're already forming our panel, and then think about how we want to interact with each other. Whether we want to have ongoing Zoom collections of people, or we want to have it on a WhatsApp or a Facebook. Email me. I think that's probably the best way because I'm not looking at the chat right now, and and spread the word. Like if you know of people on Chevra Kadishas in other places, we have right now, I think there's somebody from England, there's somebody from South Africa on the line. So this can be, I don't know where this is gonna go, but it has potential to be super supportive for all of us and elevate what we do even more.
Yeah, I oversee a group in Columbus, Ohio, and we are also in very close contact with Rabbi Zone, and it was beautiful, the nuances we learned today about all the details of the parts of the body. But I think that perhaps through local federations would be a good place to start to have community outreach in terms of educating people about proper burial and not cremation.
Right, so actually on the call now is Yael Davidovitz. I'm going to give you a call out. I don't know if you'd like to say something, Yael, about what you're doing, that you're part of NASC and that you're working to stem the tide.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Alyssa. Sorry, I was been
your name is wrong, so we're
on
super
mute.
confused.
So I was this was terrific. Thank you for joining. It's nice to meet everyone. My name is Yael, and I just joined up with Rabbi Zone and NASC. This is something that Rabbi Zone has obviously been on the forefront of witnessing over the last 15 to 20 years, the exponential growth of cremation. Sorry, my phone is dying here. Amongst Jews, not because it's a particularly Jewish trend, because it's an American trend, and most Jews are secular, and so they just follow the trends of their neighbors and of their community. And so we are deep in the midst of developing materials and trainings and all types of resources, really targeting the broad spectrum of Jews, particularly those outside of the Orthodox community, because of course those are the ones who are choosing cremation in general. So if this is something that you are interested in helping us to get the word out, then please email me. You know, Chevra Kadishas, as most of you have spoken to historically, have been, with good reason, done with modesty, with tznius. It's a chesed shel emes because we're not supposed to be seeking reciprocity, not just from the mace, but even from honor from other people. but there's a real cost that comes of that, which is that people just don't know. They don't know about the importance of burial. They don't know about Tahara. And so some Chevra Kadishas are really making a decision to kind of rise above the radar and do some outreach. So if this is something that that interests you, if this is something that you want to be a part of, if this is something that you think you can get involved with, then please be in touch with me. I put my email address there in the chat box. It's ydavidowitz@nasc.org.
I'll send it out. Yeah, I'll
Okay,
make sure
terrific.
everybody gets it. I'll make sure everybody gets the recording. I'll make sure that everybody gets a little bit of a survey to feedback what you want to, what you like, how we do this, how we create a community out of the women that came today and beyond, and who wants to stay in constant contact, so to speak, and wants to stay in connection and kind of have this as a safe place, a safe place to grow, learn, develop, connect, network, etc. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. You're awesome.
Thank you, Shalamis.
Thank you
Shalamis
so
in Denver. Excellent.
Yes, she is awesome. And we're lucky to have
Rama,
her in
look
our,
at you.
we're lucky to have her in our community.
All right. Well, this is a community. We're like working
In our
on
physical community in Providence, Rhode Island. We are
right.
very-
We're making a virtual community because we
I
can.
know.
Thank God we can do this. And like you're all such beautiful women. I'm so glad to meet you all. And thank you all for coming. And I will be in touch, and stay in touch with me and spread the word. And we'll just keep growing and being more. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Take care.
Melissa, can you stay on, please?
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you.